just like to start by asking you how you'd characterize the China-India relationship at the moment and how you see it evolving over the coming weeks.
Thank you very much for having me. Prime Minister Modi of India is coming to China very soon, and he will be warmly welcomed. And I think it is widely expected that China leader, Prime Minister Modi, will have a sideline summit meeting in Tianjin. The fact that Prime Minister Modi is not coming back to Beijing for the September the 3rd parade is a little bit of a pity, but I think his visit to China will really restore momentum to China-Indian relations. Now, I personally have coined the term that both China and India are the two only superpopulations in the world, meaning each of which has a population above 1 billion people. In that sense, both China and India have tremendous amount of responsibilities for their own people, for each other, as well as for mankind as a whole. Now, it is true that we have this border dispute between China and India, but the border dispute in the eastern section was largely due to the fact that this McMahon, a British, working with the British Indian Empire, drew a line, and India wants to have that line being recognized as China-Indian border. China will never allow that to happen. So both China and India need to work together to use all the courage and wisdom between us to solve the border dispute. If we can do that, then potentials for China-Indian cooperation will be unlimited. Because right now, the size of the Chinese economy is almost 5 times as big as India. And China is much more advanced in technology, in manufacturing, you name it, across the whole range of things. And China-Indian cooperation can really enable India to fully leverage on the advanced industrial output, for example, that China is well known for, and accelerate India's development in the coming years and coming decades. So I'm very optimistic about China-Indian cooperation in the coming years and decades if both China and India really put the territorial dispute behind us.
Yeah, there's plenty of upside to normalizing relations, but that point you make about the territorial dispute is an interesting one, and there's another player in all of this as well, and that is Pakistan. And of course, India found that China offered military hardware, also support to Pakistan during the border clash, well, during their clash earlier this year. Now, Prime Minister Modi campaigns on a very nationalist platform. What are the challenges for him in trying to normalize relations with China when China backs one of India's biggest rivals in the region?
Well, first of all, China and Pakistan have enjoyed ironclad friendship and brotherhood and sisterhood for decades. And the close cooperation between China and Pakistan is not targeting against India. However, on the Chinese side, we have no reservation in sharing our best technologies and equipment, hardware, software, with the brothers and sisters in Pakistan. Now, for really achieving lasting peace on the Indian subcontinent, Pakistan and India need to come to terms with their own territorial disputes. At the root of the problem is still the territorial disputes. And the root cause was created by the British rulers of the British Indian Empire. So I hope between India and Pakistan, they will demonstrate enough courage and wisdom. Between China and India, we will demonstrate our enough courage and wisdom to get to the bottom of the territorial disputes, not through war or military confrontation, but through peaceful negotiation and diplomacy. And if we can really resolve these territorial disputes, then I think there will be lasting peace on the Indian subcontinent, between India and Pakistan in particular, to the west side of that subcontinent, as well as between China and India, more or less to the northeastern part of that subcontinent.
Well, President Xi has been on a fairly broad diplomatic charm offensive since the election of President Trump in the United States. And in terms of the India relationship, already talking about what's being described as a dragon-elephant tango, which is it's a very close and very passionate dance. So to what degree do you see China capitalizing here and offering an alternative to the rather blunt diplomatic approach of the Trump White House at the moment?
Well, first of all, with or without the United States, China and India need to do the right thing to put the territorial disputes behind them and restore normalcy in their bilateral relations. More recently, I personally think President Trump really has manhandled India, displaying complete disrespect for India as a nation, for the Indian economy, calling the Indian economy as a dead economy, reversing the trend between America and the United States for almost a decade. And that really is a major blow to India. And China wants to make sure that in facing up to the maximum pressure from the United States by launching this global tariff war, China and India actually have lots of things that we can coordinate. And we can actually look at the maximum pressure from the United States and come up with our respective different tactics to deal with that, but not by second-guessing China and India, but by coordinating our acts together, especially, for example, within the SCO framework or within the BRI framework, etc. Many occasions, bilaterally as well as internationally, China and India facing up with the maximum pressure from the United States for the trade war are in the same boat, and we are on the same page. Now, China is not to be blamed for this rare opportunity of real substantive rapprochement between China and India. I think President Trump should be blamed because of manhandling of India. And for India, because it suffered about 200 years of colonial rule by the British, they care about their national pride, probably more than many other countries in the world. They want to be treated as an equal with full dignity and decency. And the way President Trump is handling India is exactly the wrong way to deal with a country like India, with great history, great civilization, very large population, and eager to move up the economic ladder. So this is the reality we are faced with. And for the United States, to order that India should not import oil from Russia is completely unreasonable, because it is the United States which keeps buying oil and uranium and many other things from Russia. How can they ask and demand other countries like India not to do things that the United States is doing by itself?
The US is currently India's biggest trading partner. China is number 2. Do you foresee a scenario where those positions could be reversed? And what are the areas of economic cooperation that could be explored between India and China?
Well, I think if we can put this territorial dispute behind us, and this is a big if, I think China and India can really cooperate across a whole range of things. For example, building up connectivity, railway connection, highway connection, and transmission of power from China to India. China has a surplus, abundance of electricity, whereas in India, especially in the northern part of India, they have a huge shortage of power, which actually holds back the potential in industrialization and urbanization in India. China is the leading country in connectivity, and India still need to significantly improve their road connection, railway connection, you name it. So China can apply its resources and expertise and know-how to India, helping India to accelerate. Now, without the Chinese involvement, India will keep developing. But if China and India can cooperate, I'm sure India will achieve much more rapid and higher quality development and industrialization and urbanization in a shorter time. And I think this is exactly what the people in India need, a faster rate of development to really push to the forefront of the League of Nations in the world.
Mm-hmm. You've been speaking about the need to address these border disputes between India and China, also India and Pakistan. But there's another border dispute as well that I wonder if there is a role for China in resolving, and that's the one between Russia and Ukraine, considering the close relationship between China and Russia at the moment. Why is China not taking a greater lead here?
Well, I think from day one, when the war broke out back in February 2022, China has always been doing the right thing. That is calling on both Russia and Ukraine to stop the fighting, to de-escalate, and to resolve whatever problems there are between Russia and Ukraine through peaceful means. China has never changed their position. China has been calling on Ukraine and Russia endlessly urging both of them to stop the war. China does not have a vested interest in the war as many other countries may have, and China refuses to sell any weapon to either Russia or Ukraine in the belief that they do not need more fuel to be poured onto the fire in the war, and China wants to really do its utmost to help bring the war to an end. I think what China has been doing since February 2022 has been the most honorable thing any country can do. And the fact that China is not a party involved, is not assisting Russia in supplying weapons of any kind to Russia, is really well recorded. And I think China is very pleased by this honorable role it has been playing. Now, for example, the so-called face-to-face meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky may actually stall. And I hope it will proceed and lead to a peace treaty between Russia and Ukraine. But if they run into any problem, and if Europe cannot resolve that in the absence of the United States, and if President Trump keeps changing from one position to another, etc., maybe there will be a time when both Russia and Ukraine and European countries will need to engage China in a more substantive way. Because China has always been saying the right thing, China wants to do the right thing, and China will be a very forceful and very effective intermediary for this peace between Russia and Ukraine by the end of the day.
All right, Victor Gao of the Center for China and Globalization, thanks so much for joining us today.